Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer, it is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today I wanted to go through Sextants, the massive overhaul that they had in 3.9, and how they work, how you can use them, and why they're worth considering using on your maps. So, firstly, I'm mostly aiming this at people that haven't used Sextants extensively since 3.9 changed them. Sextants come in three flavours: simple Sextants, which can drop pretty much anywhere in maps, prime Sextants, which drop in yellow and red maps, and awakened Sextants, which drop only in red maps. And they might drop a little bit outside of that as well. You can certainly get them from the Delve mines, among other places. Now, at the time that I'm recording this video, Sextants are super cheap at the moment. Historically, the lowest tier of Sextants used to go for about 1.5 chaos, the middle tier 2.5, and the top tier 4.5. They dropped a little bit in the last couple of leagues, but they're generally quite a bit more expensive than they are now. At the moment, you can get simple Sextants for about 0.3 chaos, prime for about 0.7, and awakened for somewhere around 2. Once more, I don't expect that to hold up forever. So, the way that Sextants are used is that they're applied to watchstones, not to maps. Simple Sextants, prime Sextants, and awakened Sextants do the same thing, but prime Sextants and awakened Sextants give higher numbers. And they're considerably better, but simple Sextants are so cheap that you may as well use them. So you'll see here that I've got all 4 watchstones socketed inside Turn's End. That means that I can have up to 4 Sextant mods applied to Turn's End maps. So, area contains additional monsters that convert when killed is applied to that Crimson Watchstone. If I was to remove that Crimson Watchstone and then socket it somewhere else, it would remember that it had that mod on it. If I use a Prime Sextant, the first 3 possessed monsters drop an additional Polished Scarab. Areas contain an additional Tormented Betrayer, 3 uses remaining. That's actually quite one of the better Sextant mods, but we'll get to that later. This one here, 50% increased duration of shrine effects on players. Areas contain an additional shrine and an additional resonating shrine. And areas contain 10 additional packs of monsters that deal physical damage, as well as players and monsters taking 12% increased physical damage. Now, if I was to open a map in the Turn's End area, then that map would be affected by all 4 of these mods, and the number of uses on each of these watchstones would drop by 1. Once they're down to 0, they're gone. If I didn't like one of these mods, so let's say that monsters that convert when killed was a terrible mod, either for my build or just in general, I could re-roll over it just by applying another Sextant of any tier. So, why bother using them? Obviously, Sextants make your map cost more to run, so are they worth it? Well, firstly, adding big numbers of extra monsters to maps is a very good thing. Some Sextants, such as the one that you see here, can add 10 packs of monsters, and if you have 4 of these affecting an area, then that's an additional 40 packs of monsters. That's huge. That is an absolutely enormous amount, especially if you're running a juiced up map that has increases to pack size as well. So those 2 effects then multiply together, you've got all these extra packs, and the packs are larger than they normally would be because your map has, for example, plus 43% to monster pack size. Now, Sextants generally don't add that much danger to a map, but they do add a lot of reward. There are exceptions, but the monsters added are mostly weak. And actually, this is one of the exceptions. These packs of monsters that deal physical damage, they can be a pain in the butt because they include monsters from Act 3 Scepter of God that have proximity shields that they can throw at you. Do not underestimate this mod, and whilst I normally suggest you never roll over, areas contain 10 additional packs of monsters, in this case you might consider doing so. That's up to you. If you can't deal with monsters that have proximity shield efficiently, then you should roll over this. And that applies to builds that deal damage from range with hits. So if you're using Soul Rend, you're not dealing damage with hits, you're dealing most of your damage with damage over time, you don't care about this mod. But if you're dealing damage with hits via, say, Tornado Shot from range, or even a melee skill like Tectonic Slam from range, then this can really undermine your ability to clear the map. Sextants should be about making you get more loot per hour, and so roll over ones that don't fit that. The other one that can be dangerous, and I haven't rolled it when I've just been running a few Sextants out here, is the one that says additional monsters that heal and player life and mana flask recovery is instant. If you have a duration-based effect on one of your life flasks or mana flasks, such as this Hallowed Mana Flask of Warding, then that removes the duration from it. So the flask that I've got is number 4. If I have that Sextant mod in effect, it will instantly remove curses that are on me, but they will also be instantly allowed to be reapplied. So for instance, if the map has temporal chains on it, then my mana flask will no longer deal with the temporal chains. So pay attention to that one. It's a particularly bad mod if you are using Lavinia's Spirit as the mana flask. That's the mana flask that causes all of your skills to cost no mana during its duration. If you're using that as your way of managing mana, then you must roll over that mod, unfortunately. So, mods that outright add loot are generally pretty bad on Sextants. It's usually better to add 100 monsters that drop collectively 80 items than to add 20 items. There are exceptions, and what I want to do now is go through all of the mods that are a little bit unclear. So some of them are really straightforward, like areas contain 10 additional packs of monsters that deal physical damage. You see that, you immediately know what it does, and you know why it's useful. I want to go through the ones that are less clear and demonstrate which ones I think are worth having and which ones you should roll over. This is the PoE wiki page on Cartographer Sextants, and it is a pretty definitive list of all the mods that can roll. It doesn't mention anything about how rare they are. However, that information has been data mined and is known. And it also doesn't clarify some of the specific niche bits of information about them. But I want to go through the ones that have unclear effects and that are particularly good or particularly bad. So firstly, there is one that says areas contain slipstreams, and that's not coming up there because they use a different name for it here, but it'll be haste, be what it's called under the hood, I believe. Anyways, the areas contain slipstreams is something that sounds really unclear what it does. It's a total garbage mod. It puts areas on the map that have essentially the opposite effect of chilled ground. They make you go faster, they also make monsters go faster. I suggest that you play this one once. The first time you get it, just play it once for a little bit of fun, but then roll over it forever after that. Just think of it as a wasted Sextant. You got unlucky, no different to opening a stack deck and getting a Carrion Crow from it. Nemesis monsters drop 3 additional currency items, which is here. For some reason, under the hood, it's called Map Atlas Bloodlines drop additional currency. This is the single best Sextant mod, even though I was saying before that things that just add loot generally aren't that great. The reason that this is so good is that you can get a hell of a lot of Nemesis monsters onto a map, and whilst currency items are weighted strongly in favour of getting, armorers, scraps, and orbs of transmutation and other very low value currency, the weighting's not perhaps as strong as you might think. And the last time that I rolled this mod, which is a very rare mod, I wound up after doing the 3 maps with 1 Exalted Orb, 4 Divine Orbs, 3 Annul Orbs, and a lot of other stuff as well. So how you should use this if you get it. Firstly, save this watchstone. This is not a watchstone that you should... this is not a Sextant mod that you should use frivolously. If there's any way you can do it, you should keep that watchstone off to the side, not run maps in the area, and just cherish it until you're ready, until you're set up for it. You need to find 8 mod maps that both have increased rare monsters with... So there's a mod that gives a zone 20 to 30% increased rare monsters and also makes all rare monsters have a Nemesis mod. So you want to have that mod, and you also want to have slaying enemies close to each other has a 13% chance to summon portals to beyond. So you want those 2 mods on an 8 mod map that is within the correct region. So you'll need to trade for this normally in order to get it. You might roll one by chance yourself, but you're going to want to have a bunch of them. So you want to have 3 because you get 3 uses on every Sextant. So what you'll do there is you'll get yourself your 3 of them and then put them aside, run them back to back. And when you're running them, if Zana Beyond is available in the league, and at the time of recording this it is, then you want to also add Zana's Beyond mod to the map. This will give you a 26% baseline chance to summon portals to Beyond, which can then be amped up by your awakening level of your Atlas, and this will cause you to spawn a lot of monsters from Beyond. Every Beyond pack that you summon will include a Beyond Rare and 3 blue monsters. The Beyond Rare will have a Nemesis mod, and that will cause you to get more currency items. If you do this, you can expect to get a lot of currency. You'll get a lot of Chaos Orb teardrops, Alchemy Orb teardrops, but you'll also have a very good chance of getting Exalts as well. So as I say, this is the single best Sextant mod. It is rare. Do not waste it. Save it. And in a trade league, buy 8 mod Nemesis and Beyond maps. If you're not in a trade league, if you're playing solo self-found, this is a little bit harder to abuse, but you can still get some value out of it by looking for a map that inherently has Nemesis and Beyond on it. Maybe not an 8 mod map, maybe you're not able to pull that off. Then add Zana's Beyond on top of that. Or alternately, an 8 mod map that has Nemesis inherently, and then whack Beyond on top of that. Either way, you'll be looking at getting a large currency payday from this. The other thing to do is this is the time to use a bunch of your Scarabs as well. Scarabs that add monsters to a zone, whether it be Paranda Scarabs at the cheaper end, Harbinger Scarabs at the more expensive end, these are great in conjunction with this mod. So, the next one that comes up that is really unclear is one that says, areas are alluring. This is an ultra rare joke mod. It does absolutely nothing that I'm aware of. Next up, there is players cannot take reflective damage, and the area contains additional packs of mirrored rare monsters. This is inherently good because it adds packs of monsters, but the other thing that it does that you should be aware of, it makes you immune as a player to reflect damage. It does not make your minions immune to reflect damage. It does not make your totems immune to reflect damage. Keep that in mind. You can certainly run this. You can save reflect maps that you can't otherwise run to run in conjunction with this mod, but if you're a summoner, it won't help you. Next up, there is additional monsters. Sorry, areas contain clusters of mysterious barrels. Under the hood, there's actually 5 different versions of this mod, and you can see that here. So, map atlas clusters of wealthy barrels, of volatile barrels, of bloodworm barrels, of parasite barrels, and of beacon barrels. However, you're not going to know which one you've got. You're just going to know that you've got areas contain 20 additional clusters of mysterious barrels, or 30 if it's a prime sextant, or 40 if it's an awakened sextant. So 20 is the low tier. These can be a little bit of a tricky one, because when they're good, they're good. If you get the wealthy barrels one, that is an amazingly lucrative one. You'll have a whole bunch of extra barrels on the map, but when you blow them up, they will contain currency items quite often. It is actually quite a premium sextant roll. However, the other ones are actively bad. So volatile barrels causes there to be a delayed explosion after you hit one of the barrels. There'll be something similar to something similar to the bloodline that causes shit to be left on the ground, flame bearers and the like. Those can be quite scary. You need to run away from them, and it will slow down your mapping without providing any more loot. Bloodworm and parasite barrels, I believe, add monsters, and beacon barrels, I'm not sure what they do, but they're not particularly good, whatever they are. So for that reason, this is a mod that I just generally run it once. So I go into the first map, and I have a look and see what the actual barrels are, and I'll immediately roll over. After that first map, I will roll over the Sextant if it turns out that it's anything that's actively detrimental. Next up, we have area contains hunted traitors, which is a really unclear thing. This is the single best of the zone mods that adds. This is the single best zone mod that adds more monsters to a zone. This is fantastic when you get it. Map Atlas high value enemies on own team is what it's called. Definitely always run this, always cherish it. It is better than any of the other. Adds 10 packs of monsters and so on. Then there's Map Atlas monsters that convert on death, which will come up as area contains additional monsters that convert when killed. This is beneficial as well. This is really good. It's just another example of a mod that adds more packs to the zone. But where a lot of those make the zone a little bit harder, this one actually makes it easier. You'll have Haste Aura a lot of the time while this is up, which is really useful. Now, there is another one that adds, that is called the Bodyguards one, and it says unique bosses are accompanied by bodyguards and additional map drops on completing areas. Do not underestimate this. This is a dangerous mod. These bodyguards have an ability to buff the map boss that will give the map boss considerable additional burst damage power. So they'll fire off something that looks a bit like a war cry sometimes. Sometimes you'll just kill the bodyguards without even noticing them, but sometimes they'll get off this war cry. When they do, the map boss is really dangerous. For this reason, I suggest that in hardcore you always roll over this mod. If, however, like me, you're a softcore player, it's not so bad, but roll over it if you're sort of at 70 or 80% XP and you're struggling to get to the next level. And also roll over it if you're at a point in the league where additional map drops aren't of any value. The additional maps that drop from this can be any tier that could drop normally in the map, and it just seems to have the usual bias towards higher tier maps. So there's a good chance of getting a map refund or even a +1 from it, but there's also a fair chance of getting a tier 5 in a tier 16 zone as well. There's a number of next up. There's a number of Sextant mods that add special shrines to a zone. These are mediocre, but okay. So here we have 50% increased duration of shrine effects on players. Area contains an additional bloom shrine, and then there's also resonating shrines. These both add quite a bit of momentum to players, so they can be a lot of fun when you get them. They don't add very many monsters or much loot, but they will speed up your clearing. The Gloom Shrine causes your attacks kill enemies to cause that enemy to explode, dealing chaos damage around them. This is just really satisfying for one, and also can kill a lot of monsters. Can basically get you through the map quicker. It's lots of fun, and I generally don't roll over it, but I won't fault anyone that does. It won't add more loot to the zone. And then you have the Resonating Shrine, which gives you both more effect from charges. So instead of the normal benefits of power charges, frenzy charges, and endurance charges, I believe they're upgraded to match the benefits that monsters get from those charges. Monsters generally get about triple the benefit players do from charges, and that's to balance the fact that we can get as many as 9 or even 10 of a charge, whereas they're hard capped at 3 usually. And you also get massive charge generation with this effect as well. This is a kind of cool mod, and it's a lot of fun, but again, it's not very powerful. I would suggest you don't need to roll over it, but if you want to roll over it, then go ahead. Next up, we have the Essence mods. So this adds additional essences to a zone, and monsters imprisoned by essences have a 50% chance to contain a remnant of corruption. Essences are in a pretty bad state at the moment in Path of Exile. I don't think this is a great mod. It's not terrible either. It's not something that you feel, oh, I must roll over this, but it's not something to be excited about getting. The times that I would keep this would be in leagues where there is some sort of league challenge that requires you to use Remnants of Corruption, or in leagues where there is some niche craft that's very popular that uses a particular type of essence. This was the case in Legion League, where Dread essences, Deafening Essences of Dread, were in the 100 Chaos range for a long period of time, and it was particularly the case in Synthesis League, where multiple essences were in the sort of 40 to 100 Chaos range for the Deafening versions. So that meant that basically every essence fight was worth doing. In the current state of the game in the Metamorph League, there's lots of sources of essences and not many people doing crafting with them, and so for that reason I don't think they're particularly useful to you. However, keep an eye on the economy. If in doubt, you can always go to poe.ninja and then bring up their economy aggregation information, and you can see the most expensive essences are Deafening Essences of Envy, Fear, Rage, Greed, Zeal, and Dread, and they're the only ones over 10 Chaos. And of course, make sure that you're checking against your league. So if you're in Hardcore Metamorph, you'll see there's a lot more demand for Deafening Essences of Greed there than there is in Softcore Metamorph, and that of course is because they are the life one. So you can always check that and decide accordingly, but I would usually say don't bother with the Essence ones, you can always just roll over them. Next up we have the unique bosses and Harbingers drop additional currency shards, and unique bosses are accompanied by a mysterious Harbinger. Even on its own, this is always worth doing. Adding a Harbinger to a map is a moderate boost to XP and loot, because Harbingers just have a lot of monsters with them. But this doubles the amount of currency shards that each Harbinger drops, and causes the unique boss to drop additional currency shards as well. In my experience, this is an absolutely phenomenal Sextant mod. It will cause you to gain a lot of Ancient shards and even a fair number of Exalt shards when you get this. And I'd even go as far as to say that it is worth buying Harbinger Scarabs to use alongside this when you have it. This is one of the best. This is one of the best Sextants. I put it in the top 3, and it is absolutely amazing on triple boss maps. Last time that I ran this, I remember running this in Val Temple, and this is back in 3.8, so not in 3.9. It was in the old Atlas. I had this twice back to back, so I basically ran it six Val Temples with this. And during that period, I think I got something like 5 Ancient Orbs and maybe 12 Exalted Shards. I was using Harbinger Scarabs on that as well, but it was definitely worth it. So yeah, this is a strong Sextant mod to get on its own, and it's even stronger if used in conjunction with Harbinger Scarabs and well juiced up maps, especially on triple boss maps. Definitely always take this one seriously and look forward to it. It's maybe not quite a jackpot, but it is a strong one to get. The next one that we have is the Beyond Scarab. Sorry, not Scarab, Sextant. This one's interesting. Slaying enemies close together has a 6% chance to attract monsters from beyond. That's not much on its own at all. In fact, it's so meaningless on its own that it's basically irrelevant. However, Beyond portals have a 33% chance to spawn an additional Beyond demon. Nice. But what makes this shine is when you have a map that is inherently has Beyond on it, and you add Zana's Beyond as well. When you do this, there's a sort of critical mass effect with Beyond, that the more monsters that you can kill close to each other, the more chance you've got of spawning the intermediate tiers and the larger tiers. This basically reduces the number of monsters close to each other you need to kill in order to get each tier of spawns, and yeah, it really adds up. It is absolutely sick on maps with double Beyond, and is something that, whilst I wouldn't go as far as to say that you should go out of your way to hold this mod and save the watchstone that it's on for as long as possible, it will feel really impactful when you run it. Next up, we have the various Torment-themed Sextant modifiers. So these are interesting. The first one of these is great, the other ones are terrible. So, what these do. These areas can contain an additional Tormented Betrayer, which is a new spirit. I don't actually know what the Tormented Betrayer does. It never lives long enough for me to find that out. The first possessed monsters that you kill in a map drop an additional Rusted, Polished, or Gilded Scarab. Now, getting 3 Gilded Scarabs is pretty meaningful. However, you need to go to the effort of pushing possessed monsters onto the map. There is a prophecy that does this. It is the prophecy called Possessed Foe. It causes every map boss and also every other unique rarity enemy. So that's not just rares, that's uniques. That's Rogue Exiles, that's map bosses, and that's Warband members and a couple of other things. Causes all of them to be possessed at the start. Possessed Foe doesn't always proc. Now you'll notice, if you've run this in the past, you'll notice it used to be 10 possessed monsters, it's now 3. That number has kept decreasing from league to league because this was the most powerful Sextant modifier last league, and so it's been nerfed to bring it back in line a bit. However, if you can get 3 possessed monsters onto a map and you've got the gilded version of this, it is a really strong mod. The polished one is a little bit less impressive, and the rusted one I'm willing to just roll straight over. We also have the map version and the unique item version. Those you can just roll straight over. They're just getting an additional map in the current state of map sustain is not really a reward at all, and getting an additional unique is not worth much either. Next up, we have this mod here, which is really cryptic. Area contains 6 additional packs of corrupted Val monsters. That means you're never going to roll over it. It's 6 additional packs of monsters. Area has a 50% chance to contain gifts of the sacrifice per sacrifice fragment used. So when you open a map, you can use sacrifice at dawn, sacrifice at dusk, sacrifice at noon, and sacrifice at midnight fragments to add 5% to the map's quantity. If you use one of them, then you'll have a 50% chance to put this unique strongbox in there. If you use 2 or more, you'll have a 100% chance. And then there's also, area has a 50% chance to contain Gifts of the Red Queen per mortal fragment used. Now there's no explanation in the game client as to what Gifts of the Sacrifice and Gift of the Red Queen do. But between them, they will drop Val-themed items such as 8 mod maps, 2 implicit corrupted rare items, which will be bad, Val orbs, level 21 gems, 2 implicit corrupted rare items that have incursion mods but will still probably be bad, and the like. It's been my experience that you can't get both the Gifts of the Sacrificed and the Gifts of the Red Queen on the same map, but other people dispute this, so I'm willing to say it's possible, but I've never seen it, and I've run a fair few maps where I've been eligible for both of them. With all of that in mind, how do you run this one? Firstly, you don't roll over it because it's adding more packs to the map. I would always use two sacrifice fragments, and then consider, economy dependent, maybe adding 1 mortal fragment, or even 2 if you've unlocked the 5-slot map device. But I don't actually know for certain what the best strategy is. That's just what feels right for me. A side note, the 2 different strongboxes, Gifts of the Sacrificed and Gifts of the Red Queen, will be guarded by a unique monster, but they're not very powerful. They just feel like a Temple Incursion Architect, so pretty easily killed. Not all that strong and not all that rewarding either. Next up, we have the 2 mods that modify strongboxes, and these are particularly interesting. So, I'll come back to this one later. The strongboxes in area are corrupted, unidentified, and at least rare. This is the other version of that. So, and it looks like I keep finding them. There is one other mod here. Strongbox monsters have 500% increased item quantity, are enraged, and the area contains an additional strongbox. This is the second best Sextant mod, but requires some preparation to optimize. This mod is rarer than it used to be. Once it was one of the more common mods on Sextants. Now I think it's something like 1 in 200 Sextants will have this. But it's not so rare that you need to, sort of hold on to it and get everything perfect the way that you do with Nemesis monsters drop additional currency items. So feel free to run it as it is. You won't be wasting anything too good. But if you want to optimize it, what you want to do is run it alongside every other source of additional strongboxes in a map that you can. So you want to run it alongside an ambush scarab, you want to run it alongside plus strongbox prophecies, and if Zana in your current league is offering the ambush mod on maps, then you should add that as well. Once you've done that, you also want to use divination scarabs, and you want to be running this on a map that has premium divination cards like Tower. When you're inside the map, what you then want to do is roll up every strongbox in there. Diviners strongboxes roll them as normal, but every other type of strongbox, including Arcanist strongboxes, don't worry so much about the rewards the strongbox gives you when you kill it. Instead, worry about maximizing the amount of monsters that you get in there. The best mod you can get is guarded by a stream of monsters. The other ones that are worth having are guarded by a pack of magic monsters, guarded by just a pack of monsters is next, and guarded by 3 additional rare monsters is okay. Guarded by additional rogue exile, not so great. But basically, you want to stack as many additional monsters as you can onto the zone, and onto each strongbox. And so you go into the zone with a bunch of scouring orbs and a bunch of alchemy orbs, so that you can roll these strongboxes in this way. When you've done this, you should find that you get about 12 to 14 times as many of the premium divination card drops as you would get in a normal run of that map. Running a high investment map like this does take some time, but it can be worth it, especially in maps like Tower that drop. With an okay drop rate, they drop some amazing divination cards. So that's the good strongbox mod. And as I say, that is the second best of the various Sextant modifiers. Then we have the much less impressive ones that add a set number of strongboxes. This varies with the tier of Sextant used. And strongboxes in area are corrupted and at least rare. This is an always rollover in hardcore mod, as far as I'm concerned. You're depending upon your own ideas, you might be confident opening a corrupted rare strongbox in hardcore, but there are several things that strongboxes can do that kill you. The most terrifying combination is getting frozen, and also the strongbox has either Ice Nova or has Detonate Dead. If it has both of those things, then you can be in real trouble. Additionally, you can be in trouble if it summons Caustic Ground and you weren't prepared for it. And there's a number of other things that they can do that are just nasty. So for that reason, as I say, in hardcore, just don't bother with this one. In softcore, it's not particularly good, but it's not awful. However, this adds strongboxes onto areas, so you might think that it works well in conjunction with the last mod, the 500% increased item quantity from monsters contained in strongboxes. I suggest you don't do this. The reason being that adding a couple of strongboxes isn't as significant as losing the ability to re-roll the mods on the strongboxes. Corrupted strongbox can't be identified and it can't be re-rolled. So for that reason, it's just generally not this is not a mod that you ever want to use in conjunction with the Sextant mod, with the Sextant that makes strongbox monsters enraged and have extra quantity. Lastly, I'll add that Monstrous Treasure is extraordinarily good in conjunction with the 500% increased item quantity Sextant. If you can get Monstrous Treasure to proc, then you'll basically get an enormous amount of loot. Anyways, that's all I've got for the moment on discussing strongboxes. Oh, sorry, not strongboxes, on discussing Sextants. So a quick summary, just to put everything down into a finale. Sextants are worth using and they're really underpriced at the time I'm making this video. And they add a lot of extra monsters to maps. There are bugs with them at the moment where you can't use them on maps that are on areas of your atlas that are influenced. I'm pretty sure this is a bug, or if it was a deliberate design decision, I think it will get changed because it hasn't been a popular one. Sextants add lots and lots of monsters to zones. This increases both your XP gain and your loot acquisition, and will generally almost always pay for itself at current prices. In fact, the Sextants will pay for themselves even if they're twice as expensive as they are now. But there are some of the Sextants that are rubbish, like Slipstreams. Some are actively dangerous, like adding packs of monsters that have proximity shield and deal physical damage, or the exploding barrels. And some of them are extraordinarily good and should be basically treasured and used very carefully, such as the Nemesis monsters have drop 3 additional currency items. If you've got any comments or questions, fire away. Otherwise, I'll leave it there. I hope you have a good one.